What's up, everyone? Happy Thursday. Today's Thursday. One day closer to the weekend, if you're worried about it, if you're excited for it. I am a little bit early today, but it is what it is. My kids are off from school. My wife is off from school. We're going to go pumpkin picking. We're going to go to the farm, maybe get some donuts and all that good stuff. So I'm really excited about that. But I'm also really excited about talking to you today about where home prices are going, right? Because I'm hearing a lot of different things, and interest rates have gone down. I'm going to share with you a prominent real estate person who thinks that the home values are going to go up 8 to 10% because of the interest rate decrease, which is pretty interesting. I'm going to share with you a couple other reliable sources who are not saying that. They're saying something more in line with where we should be going. We're going to look at where home values are now, everything home values, right? Because I know a lot of people are thinking about that. A lot of people are worried about home values, right? And where is your home value right now? Are you positive? Are you negative? Have you not really grown that much? Well, it all depends on where you're located, because there are people out there whose values have actually gone down from what they purchased for recently. So there's so many different variables that are really going into this, and there's so many different ideas, and there's so many different projections, and there's so many different markets to analyze to see like where our home values really at. Where are home values rising? Are they falling? Are they stagnant? Like everyone is in a different position, and that's what we're going to go over today, because I truly think that real estate is a big economic factor in the US, right? It's a huge economic factor in the US. So many people are buying and selling homes every single year, right? It's one of the biggest drivers of business for us as Americans, And a lot of people that are homeowners, they want to know, well, what's my house worth? Is it a good time to sell? If I'm thinking about selling, what is happening specifically in my market right now that is signaling that it's a good sign or a bad sign to sell your home? Because you can be where I'm at, right? I'm in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, and it's a great time to sell, because depending on when you purchase your home, I should always put an asterisk around what I say, because if you just bought a home 3 months ago or 4 months ago and you have to sell, maybe it's not the best time, because I don't know if you'll be able to get exactly what you paid for it. You should be able to get a little bit more depending on if you did any work to it. There's so many different variables, but for the most part, where I am in my town, Chester County, Pennsylvania, like it's a good market for sellers. It's a really good market for sellers. It's been a good market for sellers, but you could be in places like Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Austin, Texas, where if you bought a home a year ago, you might be underwater. You might have paid too much money, and I talk about this a lot because real estate is finicky, right? And it's market by market by market by market. It all depends on where exactly you are located and what is happening in your local market. And for homeowners, we purchase homes with the belief that it will go up in value over time. So if you buy a home right now, or if you sell a home right now, and then you buy something, you're under the belief that in some point in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the value of my home is going to go up. That's part of purchasing real estate. And that's why so many people here in the US, their retirement is built into the home that they live in. Like if you think about it, a vast majority of Americans' wealth is created in the properties that they own, not their 401k, not their retirement account with their current job, not their IRAs, not in the stock market. The majority of people, their wealth is in the properties that they own, that they live in. Okay. So that's what I'm going to be talking with you about today. We're going to be looking at home values. and just some predictions. Where are we going to go from here? I want to play this clip for you from Barbara Corcoran, and she has something very interesting to say, and we'll just dissect that a little bit too after she speaks. But let's get into this. We are going to share my screen, bring up Miss Barbara, crank it up a little bit. All right.
Great environment too, and a lot of people get concerned when they know, all right, Federal Reserve start cutting already, but market rates have actually gone the opposite. They've actually backed up a little bit.
Yeah.
So how do you explain that to people?
I can't explain the rates going up or down. That's not my bailiwick. But what I can explain is if rates go down just another percentage point, that's what I'm hoping for by year end, prices are going to go through the roof. And the reason for that
would be around 6%, get to that level.
Because everyone will come out and buy. There are probably 10 buyers on the sidelines waiting for interest rates to come down that are actually active in the market.
So that's very interesting, because she's saying that if interest rates go to where they are right now, which is 6%, that's where interest rates are currently. In this moment, when you're seeing October 3rd, we're down to the low sixes, even sub 6 in some instances if you're getting a jumbo loan, or if you're, excuse me, not a jumbo loan, but a 15-year loan or an FHA loan, So based on that, based on what she's saying, like, how quickly will it take for home values to go up that 10%? Is that even realistic? Like, come on, is that really realistic? 10%? 10%, Let's go on. Let's see what else she has to say about this, because this is really interesting to me.
Everybody's going to charge the market. And so if you wait for interest rates to come down by another point, I don't think you'll gain. I think you'll wind up paying more, because I wouldn't be surprised if real estate went up by another 8 or 10% if interest rates come down another point. I know it sounds crazy, but there's a magic number that makes people get all juicy about.
Yeah.
And it just has to slide down there for everybody to say, let's get out there and take advantage of it.
There was a story in one of the New Jersey papers, I don't remember which, Barbara, where a lot of...
All right. So she is saying that, if we get down to that 6%, that everyone is going to come out of the market now. All these buyers that were pent up, that were waiting for interest rates to drop, now they're going to be the ones coming to the market. And they are going to be the ones that essentially are going to raise the value of homes, because here's what happens. If you have a limited amount of inventory in a given area, and then you have an influx of buyers in that area. Let's just use figurative numbers, okay? Let's say you live in my zip code, which is 19335, okay? From what I've seen recently in 19335, there is only a small amount of numbers of homes for sale, right? There's not thousands of homes for sale in my zip code. Let's just say there's 100. For the sake of it, let's say there's 100 properties for sale on 19335. With interest rates where they were, in the 7s and even in the 8s, right? That's going to reduce the amount of buyers that are actually interested in purchasing a property, because they're looking, unless they absolutely have to buy a property, right? Because there's always an exception. There's always an exception. But let's say the inventory is low and the amount of buyers isn't, I'm not going to say like really low, but it's decent. It's not crazy. It's not bottom of the barrel low. It's not a buyer's market, right? So we're still talking about being in somewhat of a seller's market. So if there's 100 homes for sale in your zip code and the interest rates are in the 7s or almost at 8, let's say that comes down to 6, where Barbara's talking about, okay? So Barbara's saying that if we come down to 6, there's going to be all these people that are going to come out of the woodwork and want to buy homes, which is going to raise value. So it's really the supply and demand issue that we're seeing in the current real estate market. So let's say of those 100 homes that are for sale, there are, 50 buyers that are 50 active buyers, right? But if interest rates go down to 6% to where they're at now, are there 200 buyers? Are there more buyers? 250 buyers? 300 buyers that are interested in those 100 properties, right? So these numbers, they're not, I'm not saying that they're accurate because it's impossible to know exactly how many active buyers there are in any real estate market. But if your interest rate is down to 6% and there's a certain amount of inventory available, that is going to raise values, right? Essentially, that's what she's trying to say. And that makes sense to me, you know? So if you had your home, if you were one of those 100 homes for sale, and let's just say you've been on the market for 2 weeks and you haven't had a price reduction yet, you're listed at 500,000, and you decide, you know, I just want to keep it where it's at because I know that interest rates are going to come down, and you have seen that interest rates have gone down, down, and down. Maybe you're on the market for two to 4 weeks, you know, and there's more buyers more buyers are interested in purchasing a home at 6% than they are at 7.5, or even 8, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer because the cost of that home is going to be less and your buying power is going to be higher. So if that is the case and there's still that limited amount of inventory, but there's an uptick in buyers, that means more people are going to be interested in the home. And what happens when more buyers are interested in your home that's for sale? If you get multiple offers, what normally happens? They drive the price up, okay? Simple supply and demand. I mean, values have gone up like 30 or 40% since 2020 in this area. It's absolutely insane. Like, it's absolutely insane how much values have gone up. Now, is it likely, based on what Barbara's saying, is it likely that they're going to go up 8 to 10%? I mean, that's dramatic. That's really crazy. 8 to 10%, you know? And I really want to know what your thoughts are. What do you think? Do you think they're going to go up 8 to 10%? I want to hear what the rest, I want to share with you the rest of what she's saying.
Communities, spec communities, let's say it's a Toll Brothers community. It wasn't Toll Brothers. And they build, and the spec houses are just sitting. So in other words, they well, I was hoping with the Florida thing, I could just move on to another state.
Getting in more trouble here.
Let me get your sense of the economy, how important that is, an election year, all the unknowns, the volatility. We got multiple wars.
And remember, she said this 6 months ago, okay? So her prediction 6 months ago is that when interest rates do in fact get down to 6%, that values of homes are going to jump up 8 to 10%. Now, she didn't say exactly when, you know, she didn't say how long that's going to take, because it could be months or it could be years, you know, and that's why I really want to share with you too, a couple other articles that I found that are looking at home values. But it's really just the idea of what she's saying, right? The idea of what she's saying does make sense. It absolutely does. If there's more buyers available and there's not more inventory available, then those buyers are going to essentially drive up the price of homes. That's what happens. They drive up the price of homes, okay? Let's see, finish out what she has to say. It's important.
Wars going on now. You know, it's a scary world. I know stocks climb a wall of worry. What does real estate do?
Real estate worries too. Whenever there's uncertainty, people stall. And whenever people stall, it stalls a marketplace. So any kind of uncertainty slows down the market. But despite that, and overriding all of that is the shortage of houses. You can't erase a shortage of houses, and it's going to push that market forward.
Now, you don't dabble in stocks much, right? I mean,
there you go. So the idea of what she is saying makes sense. The idea of what she is saying makes sense. But you have to really look at, is that going to increase home values 8 to 10%? Because that's what she said, you know? And look, I'm not trying to say that she has to know exactly what she's talking about, because you can make predictions based on past experience, based on current conditions as well. But 8 to 10% to me seems kind of drastic. If I knew that in 2, 3, 4 months that interest rates were going to go from where they are now in the very low 6s down to low 5s and potentially even under 5, then I really think there would be a little bit more validity to what she's saying, that 8 to 10%, because that is going to bring a lot of buyers back out of the market. And you have to take into account of the people that are buying a home, how many of them actually need to sell a home in order to do so? That's a big point that not a lot of people talk about. Because yes, with interest rates going down, that is great news for buyers, but it's also great news for sellers. It's great news for sellers because there are a lot of sellers that are on the fence right now, right? They don't really know what they want to do. They're waiting, especially now in early October with the election, a month and a half away. There's so much uncertainty right now. So I do believe in what she's saying. There's a lot of uncertainty right now with what's happening in the real estate market, but that means that at some point that uncertainty is going to go away for a lot of people, depending on who gets elected. Your person might be in there and the other, for the others, your person's not in there. Is that really going to affect what you decide to do with your life and your home? For the majority of people, no. I feel like the election is one of those things. It's just like it's kind of like a smokescreen, for people to be worried, right? There's so many other bigger issues that we need to worry about when it comes to selling and buying homes. You got to take into account what's happening with inflation and with the jobs market and with your job specifically, because real estate is very personal. If you truly think about it and if you truly dissect it, the person that's deciding to sell their home, it's not always the same reason. Yes, there's certain categories of reasons why people choose to sell their homes. Okay, you could be relocated from your current job and you have to go, from Pennsylvania to Florida. You could be going through a divorce. You could be facing foreclosure. You could be wanting to sell your home and buy a bigger home for your family, right? There's so many different reasons why people choose to sell. And for that person that is choosing to sell their home to meet whatever goal they're trying to achieve, rarely ever are they taking into consideration what's happening with inflation right now. What is happening with the presidential election, because real estate is personal. The reason why you're selling usually doesn't have anything to do with what is going on in the current market. Okay. It normally has nothing to do with what's going on in the current market. The current market can have influences. Absolutely. I'm not saying that at all. But generally, when people decide to sell, it's very personal. And outside situations aren't really affecting when they're deciding to do it. For the most part, I get it. I completely understand. Like, it's completely different for a lot of different people. Okay. I understand that. I'm very, very, very well aware of that. But for the most part, people are deciding to sell because they have to for some reason. For some specific reason, they are choosing to list their home and do something else, whether it's buy a bigger home, move away, what have you. Okay. So I do believe what Barbara is saying is pretty important. It's important to understand that when interest rates go down, yes, it is good news for buyers, but at the same time, it is also good news for sellers. It is also good news for sellers because there is a large portion of buyers who actually need to sell their home first in order to buy. The buyer pool doesn't consist 100% of first-time home buyers who are renting, right? A large portion of people who are buying home are also selling a property. So I get it. I understand what she's saying, but we really have to consider the reason why people are deciding to list their homes. If inventory continues to stay low in your area, I need to really specify that. If inventory continues to stay low in your area, you're going to continue to be in a seller's market. And that means that when interest rates go down, if you still have low inventory and a high amount of buyers, that is going to raise the value of your home. That's how it works. If you have one person that's interested in making an offer on your home, if you have your home listed and you have one offer, and that offer, they know that there's no other competition, do you think they're going to bid $20,000 over asking if your home's been on the market for 4 weeks? No. You'd be lucky to get asking price for your home. You absolutely would be lucky to get asking price for your home if it was listed for sale for 4 weeks and there was only one offer. If your home is listed for sale and you're in a hot market, like where I'm at with low inventory and a lot of buyers who are actually looking to be in certain school districts, that means that you're going to create bidding wars because there's not enough homes for sale. And that means that the value of your home is going to go over what you expect it to sell for. If you list it at 500 and you have one offer, it's probably going to sell for somewhere in the 500 for 495, 490 maybe. But if you have your home listed for sale for 500,000 and you have 5 offers, there's a good chance you're getting 510, 515. If you have 10 offers, you're looking at 525, 535, right? So it all depends and has a lot to do with current inventory, supply and demand, supply and demand. That's what increases values of homes in other than like actually putting money into your home and making it worth more by updating the kitchens, bathrooms, and things like that. Okay. So I do think there's a lot of validity in what Barbara is saying. And I just don't really understand, not that I don't understand. I just don't really believe that we're going to be seeing 8 to 10% increases. Caro KK, people are losing jobs left and right. 2025 will be worse than 2008. I have seen people say this. I have absolutely have seen not a lot of people say this, but there always is someone believing that 2025 is going to be worse than 2008. Now, for me, I have said for a long time, and my mind has changed a little bit. Actually, my mind has changed a lot because I've talked to people who know more than me. And I'm not saying that there's going to be a real estate crash because I do not personally believe that. And my mind has always gone to, barring any kind of major economic downturn, right, that resembled 2008 or early 2000s, right, or any of those big stock market crashes, barring any kind of major event, I just don't see real estate crashing. But I had a great conversation with someone, and she said to me, Shawn, I used to think that too, but, and this is exactly what Caro KK is saying, unless the job market really implodes, and that's something to look at. Unless the job market really implodes and people are losing their jobs left and right, like he's saying, that is always a possibility. I am not an expert in that. I'm an expert in real estate. I don't really understand or try and talk like I understand too much about job market and too much economic things. I really just try to focus on real estate, but I completely understand with what you are saying there. And I really just, the point that I want to get across is I do think that depending on the market that you're in, that's what's really going to determine how much values are going to go up, stagnate, or go down. So let's jump into this other article. I could share my entire screen to make it a lot easier. Oh, man. I like 11 o'clock. Why aren't we sharing? Come on, baby. We gonna share now? There we go. So when I look for information or I don't know, I say Norada. That's my Philly accent coming out. Norada. But I look at them because I really think that they have been pretty good with what they're saying. The real estate market predictions for 2025 paint a picture of cautious optimism amidst a backdrop of volatility and uncertainty. Look, again, there's so much uncertainty out there. There's so much to really think about because with everything that is happening, hold on, I'm going to stop sharing this real quick. With everything that's happening, leading up to 2025, who do you trust and who do you believe? Do you really believe in what the Federal Reserve is saying? Do you really believe in what the government's saying about the soft landing with inflation? I mean, they were wrong. What, 800,000 jobs in their most recent job market analysis? Like they were off 800,000. Like, how is that even possible? That's absolutely insane. 800,000, right? So who do you believe, But that's why I understand that there's a lot of volatility and a lot of cautious optimism going into 2025. Now, for me, I'm a real estate broker. I'm also a real estate investor. And for other real estate investors, I'm hearing people say 2025 is going to be a good time to buy. Interest rates are coming down. I had an investment for sale. It was a duplex in a really good area or a really good town, not the absolute best area in that town, but still, it was for sale in that area. And I priced it very aggressive. I really wasn't taking into account the factors that were involved in the real estate market. I listed it at an aggressive number when the interest rates were high, when they were too high, that it didn't make sense to buy it. Like, you could have cash flowed with that property, but it wasn't going to be as good as what it used to be. And that's what people are thinking about. They want it to be they want it to be as good as what it's used to be, and that's why people are saying that going into 2025, when interest rates come down a little bit, it's going to be a better time to invest, to buy a property, but I like to look at things from the seller standpoint. So that's why we're at in this article right here, the market predictions for 2025. As we look ahead to this pivotal year, various economic indicators, market dynamics, and consumer sentiment shape our expectations. Key takeaways. So this is important. This is what I wanted. This is what I believe. Modest price increase. We have just seen way, way, way too much of price increases in the past 4 years. Like, it's absolutely been unsustainable. That's what I feel like I've been saying that for so long. At this point, I understand, like, for the market to go for my specific market to go up 30-40% in 4 years, like, it's insane. I bought my home for 395. It could sell in 600, low sixes, which is wild, right? I mean, we're talking. I bought it pre-pandemic, right? So 6.5 or 6 years. I can't do the math on that. 6 years, yeah. But that's unsustainable. This is healthy. Modest price increase. Rise moderately with that experts forecasting increases ranging from 0.5% to 4.4%. That to me seems realistic. That seems very, very realistic for what is happening in this current real estate market. Okay. I don't think it's going to be 8 to 10%, which is what Barbara was saying. Again, I can't say with absolute certainty at all, because if we keep seeing this inventory issue, which obviously is possible, and for me, what I have been thinking for such a long time is that the way we're going to solve the inventory crisis is if interest rates continue to go down, and if more of the baby boomer generation decides that they don't want the big homes that they're living in, and they need to sell them and get in something smaller. But I've even changed my mind about that a little bit. Just from talking to different people. I've heard it being called the silver wave. I wasn't aware of that, but that's pretty interesting. The silver wave of, all these baby boomers deciding to sell their big homes. But what we're seeing is they're not necessarily selling them. They're either holding them and hoping that maybe one of their siblings, one of their kids is going to move into it. But like, there's so many different dynamics that really come into how are we going to reach that inventory level in the real estate market that we need to hit. Now, inventory has gone up across the board. If you look at it globally, I don't just look at things in terms of my specific real estate market, because I understand completely that real estate is different in every market, but inventory has gone up. We have seen an uptick in inventory across the board in the US. Some areas are very close to where they were pre-pandemic, which is wild, and you're seeing that in a lot of areas in Florida. And that terrible Hurricane Helene that came through, it's just devastating, and I've been thinking about that a lot, and the people down there, people fighting for their lives. But at the same time, it's like, what's going to happen in those markets? You know what I mean? Like, those markets just going to completely stagnate, or a lot of people, who have homes there, that if they weren't destroyed, are they going to want to fix them and then list them and move away from that area? They're like, there's so much involved, right? There's so much involved in real estate, and it's very, very local. And you can look at national numbers and you can say, oh wow, inventory's up 30% year over year, or oh wow, it's up 25% or 40%. But you really have to break it down, and you really have to understand that, okay, well, what is it like in my area? Because like I talk about it all the time, is the fact that it's different, because it's very different for you and it's very different for me. It's very, very different because my area, it's not exempt from crashing at all, but it's just like, it's such a desirable area that the inventory is so low to a point where I could even say maybe we're going to go up 5%. They're predicting a 0.5%, 4.5%, and then continued inventory challenges. The housing inventory is expected to remain constrained, affecting overall market activity. And that's what we were just talking about. That's what I'm saying. It's Unless there's something that causes a lot of people to sell, that's the position that we're going to be in. We're going to be in this inventory crisis. Stabilization after a tumultuous period, the market is anticipated to stabilize, offering opportunities for both buyers and sellers. And then mortgage rate influence. Interest rates will continue to play a significant role in shaping buyer behavior and housing affordability. Okay, I don't want to talk too much about that because I'm more focused on the pricing trends and the projections. Now, these are the experts, the quote unquote experts that talk about what they believe home values are going to do. So we have several credible forecasts. Goldman Sachs 4.4 increase, Freddie Mac 0.5%. The average consensus across all these experts 2.5%. I think that's likely. In a healthy market, we're looking at anywhere between 2 to 4% increase in home values in a year, right? Year over year. That makes sense, but I keep going back to what Barbara Corcoran was saying, and what she is saying can absolutely happen. Like, you can see values increase 8 to 10% year over year. Like, that is very possible to happen. It's very possible. Sorry, I keep clicking out. The variability in these predictions may stem from different assumptions about economic recovery, buyer demand, and external shocks that could impact the national economy. For buyers and investors, understanding that these prices may not reflect significant growth can mitigate unrealistic expectations. Oh, excuse me. I just really want to know. It would be nice to know exactly where these values are going to go. And I'm also interested in knowing what you think. Like, what is happening in your market? Are you still in a strong seller's market like I am? Are you in more of a neutral market? Is there more inventory? I also work in the Pocono Mountains, and I know that there is more inventory now in the Pocono Mountains than when we purchased our home in 2021. Hands down. Hands down. There's like, I think it's close to double the amount of inventory that's for sale up there in the Poconos than what was available when we purchased in September of 2021 and when we were looking all summer of 2021. And I based that off that, Flex MLS, that's the MLS I have access to up there. I remember going on and seeing that there was like 800 listings, and let's see, I'll show you real time. I love doing these lives because I can actually show you real time. This is what I do. Don't try and look at my password either. I'm not giving it away. Hey, I see you looking. It's hidden. So I think it was anywhere, I'd pull up the MLS and I would see 800, 900 listings. It fluctuate pretty much. But now when I log in, I see, let's see, quick search. 1570. Look at that. 1,570 properties for sale. That's what I'm saying. It's like double from when we were looking. It was always in the lower hundred, or like the upper hundreds, upper 700s, upper 800s, and now we're at 1570, you know? And look, we're talking about we're the market that I'm in, you know, that I live in, that I predominantly sell in, the greater Philadelphia area. We're in a huge inventory crisis, and I don't really expect that to change much in the coming years. But then you go 200, geez, 2 hours north of here to the Poconos, the other market that I'm in, and it's more of a buyer's market now, right? So every market is different. So I have a listing coming for sale in the Poconos, and I was going through comps, right? And I was looking at the active inventory in that area, and I was like, "Oh, wow. It's much higher in that's the neighborhood that we own in. It's much higher than it's been in a long time. There's 70 odd houses for sale in this little community. It's actually a big community compared to some of the other ones in the Poconos, but I was shocked. I was like, "Wow, there's so much more inventory." So what does that mean for sellers? That means that prices are going to get squeezed a little bit. But what does that mean overall? So my clients bought their house, I think around when we did, for 125, and we're listing it at 265, which is great, right? They're going to see a huge equity. You know, they've seen a huge equity increase from just owning the property. They've taken care of it. They've done some updates. We're going to list it at 265. I think it's on the a little bit more aggressive. It's not crazy aggressive because some of the homes that are similar to that are listed in the 300s, which that's way aggressive, you know? So even in that short of period, you know, you can see from when they bought it, from what we're going to list it for, to what is actually happening in the market. So it was a strong seller's market when we purchased and when they purchased, right? It was a strong seller's market. And things started to change a lot because that's a vacation destination. So if you're selling your home and you're in one of those vacation areas, you really have to understand like what is happening in that local market, because it's not the same as where I'm sitting and filming this video. It's just not the same, you know, because in my area now, this is a full time. Like, people live here year round, right? They want to be in the suburbs of Philly because they have great school districts, great towns to live in, great job opportunities around here. Like, there's so much that's desirable about living in the suburbs of Philly. But then you go north into the Poconos, and it's a vacation destination, right? And vacation destinations get affected a lot from the economy. So for sellers here in the greater Philly suburbs, with the economy, people are still buying and selling. And it doesn't really affect values that much. But once you go into those vacation areas, that affects it a lot. You know, and a lot of people are purchasing homes with the intent of renting them as an Airbnb, as a short-term rental. And it changes a lot up there. Like, it fluctuates a lot up there in that specific market, with if you're allowed to rent it on a short-term basis or not, you know, and it's township by township, it's community by community. You know, there's so many different factors up there, but I'm really trying to paint the picture of, it depends on where you're selling your home, you know, how much values are going to increase next year or stagnate or even decrease. So my clients right now who are listing for 265, you know, if we were listing in 2022, we could have been listing for 275 or 285, right? And people would be more willing to pay that price for it as they are now, right? Because things are a lot different now. There's more inventory, which puts a downward pressure on home prices. And there aren't also as many buyers that are looking up there. Yes, there are buyers. Yes, I've got some interest already, which is great. I have it as coming soon. I don't even have pictures up yet. I have one picture of the front that I took. You know, I'm getting professional photos tomorrow, but that just goes to show you, depending on where you're located, if you have more inventory and you have more or less buyers available, then you have to really take into account your pricing strategy. You can't be extremely aggressive with your pricing and price way too high in an area with more inventory and less buyers interested. Okay. It just doesn't work that way. You're going to negatively affect the sale of your home. You have to be realistic. You have to understand the certain market dynamics, and that really, I'm trying to paint the picture, because where home values are going to go in 2025 is it's a crapshoot, It depends on where you live. So I'm going to share this again. I'm going to look at one more article that I was reading from Goldman Sachs. There you go. U.S. home prices are forecast to rise more than 4% next year. Homes prices are expected to climb as the Federal Reserve begins cutting interest rates while the underlying economy is still firm, according to Goldman Sachs. Our analysts think appreciation of 4.5 this year and 4.4 in 2025, up from previous estimates of 4.2% and 3.2% respectively. So I also want to show this, right? This is Zillow. Zillow said that according to their data, a year over year, we're up 2.9%. So Goldman wasn't too far off, right? They expected 4.5%. We could potentially get there with interest rates going down. Excuse me. But you never really know. You never know. Typical home values in the U.S. is 361, which is up 2.9%. That's year over year, going back to August 31st. That's really interesting. We spoke with research Vinay Viswanath. Oh, man, I should have been able to say that. Let's see what he has to say. It's a reflection of the fact that labor markets appear to be loosening, which gives the Fed more room to cut. Our economists now forecast the Fed will deliver 3 consecutive 25 basis point rate cuts at the remaining meetings this year. So this video came out on the 11th. So they've already done 1. They're expecting 2 more basis cuts. But here's the thing with mortgage interest rates, they price it in ahead of time, okay? Mortgage interest rates don't necessarily follow the Fed cuts. They're priced in weeks and months before, right? So if we continue to see interest rates going down, then we can comfortably say that the Fed is going to continue to reduce Fed interest rates. And Fed interest rates help with people that are like buying cars or getting loans for other things like that too, credit cards and all that. So I think that it's important to understand if you are in a market where, again, if you have a high amount of inventory and there's not as many buyers that are interested, you need to be pricing your home more aggressive in terms of less than probably what people were getting a year ago, or even 2 years ago, right? So I'm actually looking at two to 2.5 years ago. So that's something to really consider as well. Let's see. Does it make sense to subdivide part of my property and sell to a neighbor? How bad could it impact my property value for future resale? That's a really good question. I've had a couple subdivision questions recently that came up, which to me, what I tell people is when you ask me if it makes sense to subdivide my property and sell it to a neighbor, well, what is the ultimate goal? Like, what are you looking to achieve from subdividing your property? Do you need that property? Because if you're looking at subdividing a property, to me, that means that you have a large piece of land, an acre or more, and you potentially want to make money, or your neighbor keeps approaching you because they want to expand their land a little bit. So, like, what is the ultimate goal there? A friend of mine owns a property not too far from us. They've owned it for a while. And his neighbor has been saying for years that he wants to buy this small piece of land from him that is part of his property, but he doesn't need it. Like it's to him, like he doesn't need this small piece of land. He's thinking like, okay, well, if I can make a little bit of money, if I you know, if I make a little bit of money from selling this and then my neighbor has extra property to be able to essentially do what he wants. And I forget. I don't know if he's like, if he might raise horses or cows or something, right? It's kind of in the country-ish a little bit. So it really depends on what your ultimate goal is. Do you want to make money? Are you going to want that piece of land back in the future? And then also you have to take into account, how does that affect the resale of your property? You know, if you're thinking about subdividing your property and selling it to the neighbor, and it's 3 acres, and you wanna subdivide an acre and a half, that's half of your property, right? That's half of your property. Now, there isn't a lot of value in land. It's more the improvements that are on the land, which are homes, right? That's where the majority, there's not that much value in dirt. It's not as valuable as it used to be. But I think that in the future, it probably will become more valuable because depending on where in areas you live in, right? And this is, again, this all depends on the area that you live in. Because if you're in an area that needs a lot more housing, then that dirt is more available. You know, like in where I live, it's, to me, it's not congested, right? I grew up in Philly. That's congested to me. So I came out here in the suburbs and I was like, wow, you know, there's so much open space. There's so many different farms, horse farms, cow farms. People raise all kinds of animals, plant all kinds of crops everywhere, right? It's pretty awesome. Now, there is not enough housing for the demand of people who want to live here. So that means that, you know, these farmers are being approached by developers to buy their land, and they can probably charge an exuberant price if they do want to sell to these developers who want to build homes on it. And unfortunately, we're not seeing affordable housing built, you know, which sucks because there is a desperate need for more affordable housing in this area. Desperate need. Now, you know, I just saw an article where someone bought one of these farms, 20 some acres, and they're building $1 million properties on it. And it's like, really? I mean, I get it. I get it from the investment standpoint because there's not much money to be made in building affordable homes unless you can get certain grants from the government. I get that. You know, but you're buying these 20-acre parcels and then you're building $1 million homes. And it's like, there is a market for that out here, though. You know, Chester County is the wealthiest county in the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is huge. So there is a big market for people who are building, you know, very expensive homes, million dollar homes. And we see like 600, 700, $800,000 townhome communities. So like going back to that, you know, if you subdivide your property and you sell off an acre, and what is the neighbor doing? Do they want to build another house on it? Do they want to build a bigger house? How is that going to negatively or will it positively affect the value of your home? You know, you really have to take all these things into account. You know, and how is that going? You know, and then I talked to the well guy, and they need some more parking. I get that. There's You know, there's always a reason why your neighbor is going to approach you to buy a piece of your land. You know, it's because they need it for some reason. If someone needs more parking, like if your neighbor comes to you and they're a business, you know, and you're in a residential community, they're a business, which you know, that's where we live. We share a property line with actually 2 businesses, good and bad. We live in a town, so you know, take it for what it is. So if your neighbor needs more parking and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'll subdivide my land. That's cool." And then that means you go through the whole process, you get a chunk of change, they need more parking, but now you don't have that piece of land and there's more parking. And if you're like me, I can be a curmudgeon with where I live. I don't want more. I want to be further away from people. I don't want more people being close to me, you know? So you really you just have to take into account, how is that going to affect how you live? If you have a 3-acre piece of land and you subdivide it in half, you essentially will reduce the value of that property. Yes, you get a big chunk of change for it when you sell it and you subdivide it. But what if they build some kind of monstrosity there that, yeah, they're allowed to build it? That's fine. But at the same time, now you have to live next to that. And then when you go to sell it, the person who buys it has to live next to that. What if they build a giant pole barn that's like, I don't know, 40 by 80 feet, and they want to put a business in there, and the business is loud. Like there's so many things to consider when it comes to subdividing, where yes, you can benefit from how much money you'll make from it in the short term, but you really have to consider certain things in the long term, because it could really affect the way that you live, and that's important for me. I don't know how important it is for you, but it definitely is important for me. I'm going to share my screen again just to get through this video. Actually, we got a question. I'd rather do questions. I'm way more interested in questions. Hold on, Daniel, I'll get to you. Daniel said, I am in Orange County, California. Very expensive area. Very, very expensive. And I'm a little skeptical of your prediction. I'm currently selling my home. The rates have gone down 1% since the last comp was sold. We had to cut the price today. We're now $40K under the last sold comp in 2024. And this is what I'm saying, that it's very market driven. It's very, very market driven what is happening. So you listed your home for sale and the rates have gone down. So what is happening, Daniel, what is happening in the Orange County market? Is it more of a seller's market or is it more of a buyer's market? Now, you say that you had to reduce the price 40K from the last sold comp, but from when you purchased the property and what you paid for it to what you have it listed for now, what is that difference? So if you paid 700 7 years ago and it's listed for 1.25 and you dropped it down to 1.21, like that's still what, $500,000 difference? So it really that's why real estate is so interesting, because you really have to take into account the full picture. The last sold comp, you're like me, like you listed your home in, we're in California, where interest rates are interest rates across the board, right? But you really just have to look at the value of your home as opposed to what you bought it for. Exactly. Since 2014. Okay. So you bought that home in 2014 and you've doubled in value, right? So, that takes a lot. Like, and sometimes people don't really think about that. They just think about, oh, well, my neighbor sold for 1.2, so I'm going to list it for 1.25, right? I'm going to try and get 50K more, and then you realize, like, yeah, you're probably going to have to drop the price down a little bit if it's not selling. And now you're in a situation where you come down. So you're actually saying you're listed 40K under the comps, right? And that's why real estate can be so finicky at times, because you really don't know what's going to happen. And I say this to all of my sellers. The market is the market. Values are the values. And the value is driven from what the buyer is willing to pay for your home. So I can do all this analysis. I can run all these comps. I can run all these scenarios, and we can come up with a listing price. But the listing price is a listing price. The listing price isn't the selling price. It all depends on what the buyer is willing to pay for it. And if you're in a market, Daniel, right now where there are more homes for sale than the last comp, that's something to consider. I don't know if that's the case or not, but if you are in that position where you're like, what's happening? We have to reduce our price 40K. And then you also have to take into account, how does your home compare to that last comp? Do you have everything that in your home that the last comp has that's sold? That's something that you really need to consider as well. Is your home the features wise? Is it the same beds? Is it the same baths? Do you have updated kitchen? You have to compare apples to apples. And I say this to clients all the time when it comes to pricing. with that, the Pocono Mountain home that I'm talking about that we're going to be listing, it's like I had, when I first had the conversation with my clients, it's like, okay, your beds, the features of your home, the beds and baths, acreage, square feet, and things like that. That's, that's the basis. That's where we start. We want to compare it to other properties that are 3 beds and 2 baths. Man, I'm talking too much, but I love talking about real estate. That's where we start. That's a starting point. Then you have to look at, and I hadn't seen the property yet, and I had plans to go up and see it after we talked, and I saw it last week. But that's your starting point, right? And then you have to look at the comps based on the condition. So there were a lot of homes that were similar to those that were 3 beds, 2 baths, 1,200 square feet, that were much nicer, and they sold for 350, 360, 330, and so then you have to compare it to similar condition properties as well. So we knew that this property still needs work, needs updated bathrooms, needs an updated kitchen. There's still some other things that need to be done updating wise to make it get up to what it could potentially sell for, in those mid threes. And that's the second piece of pricing. And then you have to look at inventory. What is currently on the market? Based on the inventory of homes that are currently on the market, how does your home stack up against those? Do you have more? Do you have less? We realize that we have less. So that means we have to price it lower in order to sell it, you know? And again, they bought it for 125 and we're listing it for 265. You bought yours. I don't know what you bought yours for. It looks like demand has dropped off. Yeah, Daniel, looks like demand has dropped off substantially. Even with lower rates, most homes in my area are cutting listing prices. And look, and again, we're seeing that in a lot of areas. And I just did my last live, or it was either the last live or the one before that, if you want to go back to that, talked about price reductions, right? We're seeing a lot of price reductions in a lot of areas because the demand has gone down substantially. It's not what it was, right? It's not what it was at all in some areas, right? That's why real estate is so super local, man. It's so local because there hasn't been like that when I did that live, I think it was either a week or 2 weeks ago. I looked at my market and we were seeing price reductions close to 10%, but across the board, nationally, it was more like 19%. So we don't see a lot of dramatic price reductions around here. And I know that, and you're part of where your home is located in Orange County, California. Uh, I from what I know about Orange County, and I don't pretend to know a lot, but I feel like it's a very desirable area. But at the same time, it's California, so it's probably priced really high. It's in a very, very nice area. Like my brother lives in Riverside County, I believe, so they're in Temecula. And even from what he like, because he has sold and purchased a home, he just bought a home recently, actually. Um, Even when interest rates were a little bit higher, but from what he sold is the property that he was moving out of to what the neighborhood was selling just a year later was like there was like a 300 grand difference, right? Which is crazy in just a year. So you might be in one of those areas now, Daniel, in Orange County, California, where the values have just gone up too much to where people are just priced out. They're like, dude, we can't afford this. That's why you're probably seeing a lot of price cuts. And it might not have to necessarily do with demand, but demand is also a factor. And you have your home listed in a time where there is a lot of volatility with what's happening in the market, and also what is happening with the presidential election coming up. Because in election years, people just tend to be a little bit more pessimistic because they want their guy, their girl in, whatever. So they're going to be holding off on buying until afterwards, right? So there's a couple different factors against you having your home. I don't know exactly when you listed your home, but even listing, because you said you had your home on for, I think you said you had a home on for a little bit and reduced the price, which to me means that you probably listed it in September and people are going back to school. But also I think I think in California, they go back a lot earlier than they do here on the East Coast. It's generally like end of October, beginning of September, but I believe that people go back, or I'm sorry, August, in like early August. So, there's a lot of different factors. Like the timing could have not been right. Interest rates are higher, and then, interest rates came down a point, and you're still not seeing that demand, which, again, there's so many different factors that play into it. And depending on how you listed your home to start, that could have a lot to do with it as well. Like, were you trying to get that like over and I'm not just saying you, Daniel, in general. I'm talking about people who are listing their homes in general. How you list your home to start matters. Like that matters a lot, and you want to be aggressive in my opinion, with pricing it slightly below what the other homes are selling for in the market. But you could potentially get stuck in that weird position, which what you're in, and knowing that, again, it's hard to predict exactly what your home is going to sell for until the market tells you, until buyers actually tell you based on feedback. And that's like the number one thing that I really try and get across to seller clients. It's like, what your home is going to sell for is based on buyer feedback. If you have a lot of people interested in your home, you're going to bid it up, with more offers, is going to bid up the value. If you don't have that interest, you're not going to bid up the property, and you might be stuck in that rut of actually having to reduce it. And it's not, I'm not trying to say that you did anything wrong. I'm not trying to say that your agent did anything wrong, because, listing your home now is very different than what it was listing it a year or 2 years ago, especially with everything that is happening. So I hope that helps, man. Let me know if there are any more questions. I know we got through this article of where home prices are going to go. I mean, everything's a prediction too. Everything is prediction. I'm thinking somewhere between 3 and 4% realistically year over year between now and next beginning, or yeah, I'm gonna say now and towards the end of 2025 across the board for all. I think it's a good opportunity to sell depending on where you live. You also have to take into account certain personal factors too. Like I can't stress that enough. Can't stress that enough. Some people, for the majority of people, they have to sell for a certain reason. And you have to think about that too. Whatever the reason is you're deciding to sell, just make sure that you really follow pricing. Again, I just did a full live about that last week. Just go back to that live. I did over an hour all about pricing, and being successful in any real estate market. Just go to my channel, click on the lives, and go back to that and watch it, because that one is really going to help open your eyes to things that you don't necessarily know. Thank you guys for being on. I appreciate the questions. I love it. Appreciate the comments. Looking forward to doing one next week. I'll be on Thursday, probably. I don't know. I've gotten some people on this, so maybe 11 o'clock is better. Maybe, I don't know. I think I have to do 12 next week. I got something going on. But look, the Phillies, it's Red October, baby. Red October. I'm super excited. My Phillies are on Saturday. NLDS, super excited for that. Who are you rooting for? We're going to play the Brewers or the Mets. Are you against the Phillies? Are you not a Philly fan? My Eagles aren't looking so good. Flyers are looking good preseason. Sixers are looking good. I mean, it's going to be a fun year. Let me know. Looking forward to speaking with you guys. Have an awesome week.